So I'll kind of go through in order. For the layers, we'll probably want to look at this section over here. This is going to be our epidermis. Remember, the epidermis is going to be the epithelial layer of the skin. It's going to be on the surface. And we've got kind of 5 layers. Usually you won't see all 5 layers. The only place you'll see all 5 of them would be on your fingertips and your palms and the soles of your feet. But because it's a model, like I said, they take a little bit of artistic freedom. So we've got hair and all of the layers on the same thing. As far as the epidermis goes, our upper layer, our surface layer, the part that's exposed to the environment is going to be our stratum corneum. Over here it's really, really thick. Over here it's really, really thin. It's going to be really, really thick on your fingertips and the soles of your feet because it's exposed to the environment. It's going to be exposed to a lot of stress and touching and rubbing on stuff. So it needs to be very, very thick so that it can protect it. Under that, only in the fingertip and the soles of your feet is going to be the stratum lucidum. And that's going to be this orange portion right here. So corneum, lucidum. Below that, either below the lucidum or below the corneum, if we're in other skin, is going to be our stratum granulosum. It's not very distinct on this model, but if you look kind of right here along the edge of this blue portion, you can see it. There's like some specks. Can you see that at all? Yeah. That's going to be our stratum granulosum, and it looks grainy under the microscope, so that's where the name comes from. So that's our corneum, lucidum, granulosum. Under that, usually the thickest layer, this blue portion over here, is going to be our stratum spinosum. It's named that because the cells look kind of spiny under the microscope. So this blue portion is going to be our stratum spinosum. And then our basement layer, right along the basement membrane, is going to be our stratum basale, or stratum germinativum. So it's just this very bottom layer, and you can see they've kind of distinguished it by making it a little bit darker. It's just the bottom layer. So that's our epidermis. Below that, from about here to here, is our dermis. And our dermis is going to be where our hair follicles are, where our sweat glands are, and all of that. That's all going to be found in the dermis.
Those are the sweat
glands?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the dermis. It's connective tissue primarily. And then these little extensions that go up into the dermis, or into the epidermis, sorry, are going to be the dermal papillae. So these kind of little bumps that kind of stick up are going to be the dermal papilla, or dermal papillae. The hypodermis is going to be everything below the dermis. Hypo means below, so below the dermis. And it's going to be all of this. It's primarily fat or adipose tissue. Excuse me. So our subcutaneous adipose tissue is going to be all these little yellow spots here. And that's going to be our hypodermis, everything below that. A hair follicle. Hair follicle is only going to be below the skin, so it's where the hair grows out of and eventually pops out. So the hair follicle is just the opening that the hair grows out of. All right? The hair shaft is going to be what ends up growing out of the hair follicle and ends up growing out of the skin. So all of this is going to be our hair shaft. And then within the hair shaft, we have kind of 3 layers. The outer layer, the very outer layer, is going to be our cuticle. The cuticle is very, very thin. They haven't really clearly distinguished it on this model. You can kind of see, like, what's our cortex? Yeah, you can't really see. They haven't marked the cuticle on this model, but it's very, very thin on the very outside of the hair shaft. The next layer in is going to be the cortex, and you can see they've marked it in white on the outside of this brown portion. Yeah. So this white portion, or actually, you know what? It looks like they've made the white portion the cuticle. This very thin white layer. You can kind of see if you get up close. Will be the cuticle. It looks like they made the brown portion the cortex, and that's where the melanocytes are, so that's where the color is going to come from. So I think this brown portion is supposed to be the cortex. So we've got white cuticle, brown cortex, and then this white portion in the middle will be our medulla. Medulla is always the center of something, cortex is always the outside of something. So cuticle, this thinny white portion, brown is the cortex, white is the medulla. The root is going to be anything that's below the skin. So from here to here is the root. And then the hair bulb, or the root bulb, I think they call it hair bulb in your lab, is going to be this portion down here. So think of it kind of like a green onion, that kind of bulby part at the bottom. Just like in a green onion, the bottom bulby portion is going to be the hair bulb. In your root, you have two major layers. There's more, but these are the only two you have to know for class. We've got our internal and our external root sheath. So our internal sheath is going to be this pink one, and then our external sheath is going to be the blue one. So internal is pink, external is blue. They look different on the other models, so you want to look at those too. The hair papilla, so if we look down at our bulb, down here, our hair papilla, just like with our dermal papilla, these little extensions up into the epidermis, our hair papilla is this extension down here into the hair bulb. So this little extension here where we see blood vessels and there's also nerves there, that's going to be our hair papilla. You'll see these muscles attached to the hairs. These are called your erector pili muscles, and these are kind of unique as far as muscles go because they don't connect to bone, they just connect skin to your hair. And if you've ever seen a cat, when it gets scared, its hair sticks up. That's the muscle that's doing it, the erector pili muscle. So it just makes the hair stand up. The only other things we have are the glands. So we've got three types of glands. We have sebaceous glands that make oils, and those are going to be dumping the oils into the hair follicle. So these blue ones that are attached to the hair follicle are going to be our sebaceous glands. Sudoriferous glands refers to sweat glands, and we have two types. We have our merocrine or our eccrine glands, and these ones are going to be small. These ones right here. And then we also have apocrine glands. And these are going to be these big yellow bulbous ones. Your apocrine glands are going to be involved in regulating your body temperature, these white ones, and they're functioning all the time, and they're found all over your body. Your apocrine glands are the ones that make body odor, the ones that smell bad, and those are only going to be found in certain regions, like the armpits. So the apocrine glands produce pheromones and that kind of stuff. They produce odorous sweat, so these yellow ones. And then merocrine or eccrine glands are going to be these white ones, and they're found everywhere. You have a lot of different receptors that are involved in touch. We are only looking at two, our tactile corpuscle and our laminated corpuscle. Our lamellated corpuscle, they kind of look like an onion. Remember lamellae in the bone, or the layers, and they're the same thing in the skin. So they're these guys right here. And then our tactile corpuscles are, I believe, these guys. That's what they're supposed to be. They might be missing. I believe they're supposed to be these ones. They're kind of towards the surface, towards the epidermis. And those are our tactile corpuscles.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no
I really
problem.
appreciate that.
Any questions?
So,
On the quiz though, for the blood